Hi guys, so welcome back and let's cover the rest of the variables which we plan to cover, like the string and the variant and the couple of other things, very interesting things. I'm going to share it with you, right? So welcome to the part number 2 of this the variables. So I'm using the same file. This is the part 1 and part 2 file. So let's go to the Visual Basic, guys, and let's talk about this program. So what I do is let's create the another macro over here. So let's talk about the string, understanding the string data type, right? So string, guys, it is a data type which we actually use to uh, work with the text entries alphanumeric, like a b c d e f g h, or anything which is in the form of the text, right? String means that, right? It's a very common word. This is something we use in the Excel also. So how we are supposed to do it? So for example, let me give you a very interesting question. So let's say here we have 3 and 10, and I go and say that this is A and this is, let's say, B. Okay, and let's say we delete this, right? So this is right now the scenario in front of you. Now if I make the program in this way, for example, I declare a variable called, let's say, dim I as a string, and then dim j as a string. Okay, so let me just correct that, dim as string. Okay, and by the way, let me do one thing. Let me just give it a bigger font. Let me just pause the video and then I come back to you. Okay, fine. I have increased the font size just to make you feel good. So these are the two variables we have declared, I and j, as string. Now we will go and say that I is equals to range of a3 dot value. Okay, and I write here j equals to range of a4 dot value. Okay, now before I go further, guys, I want to tell you one thing very important. It's, you must know it. You see that I have written here range a3 dot value, and I haven't really anywhere written the sheet 1 dot select. I'm not going in that sheet, I'm not writing it. So the thing is, why I'm not doing it, because I know that when I'm going to work on this macro, I will always be on the sheet 1. Okay, so that's why we don't prefix the sheet name here. But just in case if you are on a different sheet, for example, I'm here on the different sheet, and now if I try to run this macro, then what will happen when you run this? Let's press F8. Now you see what will happen. Your I value will be empty, your j value will be empty, because now VBA will refer, when this code will run, VBA will refer to the sheet 2, this sheet 2, right? It is not going to refer to the sheet 1. So if you are pretty sure, and I think because macros are always, they are run from the buttons, so it's very obvious that if somebody is going to run the macro, they will go and create the button here. Why I would go and create the button here if I'm supposed to run this here? That's how it is. So if I create the button here, it's obvious for me that the user click on this sheet 1 and then click on the button. So that's why we really don't have to worry about this. But just in case, if you create the macro over here, let's say if you create the, if you go to the insert and you create the macro over here, then you have to make sure that the value should come from sheet 1, if that is your plan. For example, if I just go and assign the macro, so let's go and assign the macro. This is the macro name, right? So now what will happen when I click here, your macro will run. Let's put the break code over here. Okay, this is how I can put the break code. Basically, putting the break code means that your macro will stop here. You just need to click here on this side. I click here and you see that I can put the break code here. If you do not want that, you can remove it. Okay, now what is the benefit of it? Now you see, if I just run this, if I hit here, my macro will stop here. So from here I can take this on the F8 mode. That is how it is, right? Because if I do not put the break code, guys, I will not be able to explain you. The moment I click on this button, my macro will run in seconds. So that's why we call it a break code. Now from here I can go and press F8. Now you see that because this button is on the sheet 2, so what is your active sheet? obviously it is sheet 2 and which is a blank. So in the blank sheet you have the range A3 which is empty, so it's not going to work. So either you do one thing, you make sure that when before I and j get the values, we should be on the sheet 1. So this is how we write, isn't it? Right? So when I click here now and I press F8, you see that it's going to take me to the the sheet 1. And now from the sheet 1, obviously the active sheet, it's going to pick up the A3 from there. And as you can see, I have got A and then I have got my B. Right? This is how. There is another way of doing it. If you do not want to put this, syntax over here, let me just comment this. Let's put the positive here. You can also do this way. You can write the sheet name here and you can write the, like this. You can prefix that dot range dot value. So in this case, what will happen? You don't have to go to that sheet because you can get the value of any cell's sheet, any cell's value from any sheet, by simply being on any other sheet. That's quite possible. There is no problem in that. So right now, even if you are on the sheet, let's say 1, let me just sheet 2, let's say I'm on the sheet 2. Okay, now I hit here and you see that we are not gonna go in the sheet 1, but this particular line will directly pick up the code from there. Right? So if I just hover my mouse on I, you can see that you get to see this value A, and if I again press F8, you see that you have the value B. Right? So you have the different ways of doing it. Right? So anyways, that I just wanted to give you the demo. I come back to here. Now let's quickly run this code, and I'm not going to change this because that's okay. Let's keep it like this. So now I create one move variable because we want to create one more variable here. So I create here, let's say R as string. Now if I ask you guys, if I ask you that this is what you're supposed to do, I plus j, what do you think, what will be the value in the R? And later I want to use that value in the A7, like this, so I just go and write here R. Now you need to tell me, pause the video and just give it a thought. Ask yourself, use your mind, use your brain, use your experience so far, whatever you have got from this, all the videos, that if this code will run, and if it runs, what would be the output? And if this is not going to run, then which line will throw the error? Okay, so now the thing is, of course this will run. If you are thinking that this is not going to run, I guess there is only one possibility which can which can make you say so that this is going to give you the error, the plus sign, because you might be thinking that the text cannot be added. But the point is, in VBA the plus sign is considered as concatenate if you are dealing with the text entries. Remember, I'm not talking about the numbers. Numbers, if you put, definitely they are going to be added. Okay, so when I run this line, let's go and put the local window also over here. So look at this now. Now you're gonna see A, you're gonna see B, and then you see that A plus B means AB. So basically either you put here plus or and operator, ampersand we call it. I'm talking about this and, right, for the strings only. Remember, that works the same way. So the moment you press F8, you see that you get the value here as AB. Right? That's very simple, right? So now let's go and create the copy of this macro, and let me ask you something now very interesting. So what if I say that, so I just give it a name called example. Okay, now what I do is, guys, I go here and say that this is 2, 20 and this is 10. Okay, and we delete this. Now you have to tell me, if I run the same code, I'm not going to do any changes over here. If I run the same code, what will happen? What are you going to see, error or value? And what will be the value, by the way? Are you saying that 2010, or you are saying 20 plus 10, which is 30? What it is supposed to do? Or you're saying that it's going to give you the error, right? So you will not get the error. First of all, let me clear this. If you're thinking that this is a string and we're going to use 20, so definitely we will have the error, type mismatch error. No, guys, I'm not sure whether you know this or not, but in Excel, numbers are also convert it to text very easily, right? Numbers can be converted into text, and I have talked about all these things in my Excel videos. Okay, now if you run this, see what's gonna happen. When you run this I as 20, it's gonna take the value of 20, but do you see something unusual here? You see the double quotes? It's coming under the double quotes. What do you mean by the double quotes? Double quotes means that basically this 20 is not going to be considered as an integer. It is a string, and again you run this as 20 and 10, so you have the double quote. So when you go and plus the strings, what happens? It works like a concatenate function. It is not going to sum, it is going to join them, and that's why when you run this, your R comes as 2010, and finally you have a value 2010, right? Well, you're seeing this 0.000 just because of the formatting thing. Let me go, and because you remember I was talking about the single and the double, so we have a lot of decimals here. Let's just get rid of it. Okay, so this is the first question. This was the first quick exercise for you. Just wanted to tell you that it's always not happen that when you get the error or your program has some errors. It may happen that the program runs, but still we have the errors in the output. This is the perfect example. Now let's say if somebody wants to add the 20 and the 10, which most of the time we do because numbers are always supposed to add it, you know. I have never worked anywhere where I am supposed to concatenate them, but anyways, I'm just talking that if you want to add them and you have used this as a string, it's going to create a problem for you, right? Now understand this scenario. I just go and copy this again, and I go here, and now I go here and I just give it a name called example 2. Now what if there is another exercise for you. Now what if I say that if you have the text over here, let's say A and B, then definitely we would like to see AB. Okay, so but if you have the numbers like 5 and 10, they should not be concatenated, they should be added by default. How will you do it? Because if I just go and write here in the A3 and A4, for example, let me just give it a border and the border. So if I write here, let's say test, and I write here, oops, what happened? What's wrong with this? Let me just go and see that. Okay, test and test 2. Okay, now what I want is right now it should be concatenated. Okay, so you know that the moment you run your code, this particular code, this should work, and we should be able to see test and test 2 in the yellow cell. But my point is, your program should automatically, if somebody changes here these numbers, they convert this to numbers, this should not be 10 and 10, this should not be like this, which is right now this is going to do. If I run it, this should be 100. How will you do it? Well, you have to change this string to integer. You go here and write here integer, and or long, whatever you want to call it. This is a small number, so even byte will work. So you just go and do this integer, right? So if I just go and delete this and I run this now, so let's go and run that. Now you see that this is how it is going to work. You get here 20, right? But every time the programmer is not going to come in the background. We have to make a universal code. So we are expecting strings, we are expecting numbers, anything can come. Then what will you do? In that case, we will leave everything to the VBA. Let the VBA decide the nature of the data type. Yes, you can do that. You heard me right. Let the VBA decide which data type it has to, give. So how are you going to give this control to the VBA? So in place of the integer or string, this is the another data type, guys. This I showed you in the part 1 in that PPT, variant, right? What do you mean by the variant, guys? So variant is a data type. Let me just write it here. Variant is a data type which can be used when user is not sure about the nature of a value. User means you and me, who is going to work as a programmer, right? Now you see what's going to happen. Let's so I just go and put this also under the border. So let's say I write here 10 and 20. Okay, now you see what's gonna happen. The moment I run this, look at this, guys. Do you see anything different here. This time this type is showing variant and then slash and then empty, right? So variant slash empty, what do you mean by it? That means in this empty part, once the VBA reads these I and j values, it will decide the future, the data type it has to give. So let's see, let's go and run that. Look at this, it created double, right? Again run it, it created again the double one, right? So VBA thinks that the double is the best one, and obviously you know that double is the best because double can really look after the decimal numbers as well as really the big whole numbers also. So it decided to go with the double, and we don't have any problem in that. Now since they are the numbers, they are the double because double is a number data type, and you don't see here those double quotes around this 10 and 20, so naturally they are going to be added as a number. So now what you got here, guys? 30. Interesting, right? So you have the 30 here, right? Now if I just go and change this to, let's say, ABC, and let's say ABC, now what should happen according to you? Let's go and check that out. Right now I go here and I'm just and one thing more, if I run this right now, if I just go and run this code, let me first of all run this code. Okay, look at this carefully. So what you got in the I, look at this. Now this time the VBA is using the string data type automatically. We are not doing anything. Again, you can see that j also, it is a string, right? So now r equals to I plus j. The moment you run this, you will have the error because I forgot to do one change, a little change. Now you need to tell me what is this error is all about. Type mismatch. Type mismatch always comes when you are choosing the wrong data type, right? So if I just click on the debug, this is the line creating the problem. So basically you have a problem in the R. So what is the issue, guys? Think on it. Why you're getting this type mismatch error on the R? When you have a value in the I as ABC, and when you have a value in the J also ABC, why? What is the issue? Because we forgot to do one thing. You see that R should also be variant, because R is integer and you cannot actually use the strings for the integer. Can you really sum them? It's not possible, right? So we cannot do that. So I have to either declare this as string or variant. Of course I would declare this as a variant because it should work for the numbers also. So I'm just going to write here dim R as variant. Let's now run this code. Now look at this, you got ABC, ABC. And now finally I have my answer here as ABC, ABC, which is done, right? So next time when I write here 10 and I write here 20 and I just go and quickly run this code, let me press F8 quickly, you see that you get to see here not 1020 but 30. And if you just go and write here A, and let's say you write here ABC, and then you just go and run this again, you'll see the ABC. That's how it is. Now the one last question. So what if you write here 100 and now you want to run this? What do you think, guys? What will happen? Will this code run, or is it going to give you the error? Let us go and check that. This is very interesting situation. You should understand it. So first, when we run this, you see that the I is used as a double by the VBA and the J is used as a string, right? Now if I just go and sum this 100 and ABC, look at this, what's gonna happen? You're gonna get the error as type mismatch. It is not going to concatenate. You cannot concatenate double with the string, guys. Understand, right? Either you convert this 100 to a text, which how you can do it, because if the VBA is going to read this 100 over here in this line, VBA will always create this I as number. VBA is not going to put the double quotes over here. VBA will never do this because VBA will use its own mind, and if the VBA sees this number as 100, it will definitely give it a double data type, not any other data type. So once you have the number, you cannot add 100 and ABC, right? So if you just go and write here as a string, that's a different thing. Then the code will work, because now you are deliberately saying that I want to make this I as a string. It's not the VBA which is deciding, you are deciding. So now you can see the double quotes are coming. So if this is also a string and this is also a string, so both an I and a J are string, definitely your code will work. Are you getting my point? This is how you should work. This is how you should understand the things, right? When you're writing the things by yourself, you're using your own mind, and then you can do whatever you want. But if you're leaving it to the VBA will decide the best thing, and then if you just declare it as a variant, that's how it is going to work. Now let's go. So we have covered all the important data types. There are some of the data types which are left, like object. We haven't talked about it, the boolean. So we will be talking about them in the coming sessions, but right now we have covered the byte, integer, single, double, and then of course we have covered the string, guys, right? And the important one is the variant, right? So I hope you are clear about that. Now let's go and talk about something very interesting. Now many of you must be you must have looked at here on the top of the line, which says option explicit. We call this option explicit, and you see that whenever I go and insert the module from here, this option always remains there. So what is the use of it? Can I delete it, or should I not delete it? And by the way, why it is coming, by default? So we will be talking about this, and trust me guys, this is very, very important. Okay, now before we jump onto this option explicit, one question came up in my mind, when we were talking about this the variant data type. Now in your interview they can ask you that if everything we can leave it to the VBA, using the variant, because variant decides, the VBA decides everything, then what is the need of even declaring the other data types? Let us go ahead and declare everything as a variant, and let's just leave that to the VBA. Well, that's a it's a valid point. If VBA can decide everything, then there's no need to declare it, but guys, variant takes a lot of memory, right? I'll show you. So I have opened the same this PPT which we saw in our previous session. Now look at this. If you look at this variant, variant actually takes a lot of space. 16 byte for any numeric value, up to the range of a double, and if let's say same range as for a variable length string, so 22 bytes plus string length. Okay, so basically if you look at this entire table storage size, variant is going to take the maximum space. So that means if you are going to use 10, 20, 40 variables and everything you are going to declare as a variant, certainly not a good idea. Your memory will be used, right? A lot of memory unnecessarily you're going to use, and that can be a problem. It can run the program very slow. Technically there is no problem. I mean, the program will run, it will not give you any bug, but as a programmer, as I said, that you need to concentrate. You need to make sure that the program should also run very fast. Okay, so variant is, that's why we avoid it. But it's you saw that, yeah, I just shared this example with you. Variant is also very useful when you are unsure about the nature of the value. So you must tell your interviewer that variant will not be my choice unless I I'm not sure about the nature of the value. If it is a string and tomorrow it is a number, it is a decimal, I will leave it to the VBA, and for sure I will use the variant. Otherwise I will not use it, because it's going to take a lot of space in my memory, and it's gonna run my program very slow. So that's why I will avoid it. So I know its advantage, I know its disadvantage, and accordingly I will use it, right? So that's something you should be able to answer it. That's very important. So let's come back to the option explicit now. So first of all, you understand that option explicit, when you insert the module, it may not be coming in your this on the top. I'll tell you the reason. Because by default, what happens when you go to the tools and the option, you remember this, I told you this in previous session. We talked about the this auto data tips, right? And what is it? When you hover your mouse on any variable or any VBA syntax which returns some value, you can see that from there. Now if you look at this, there is a line called require variable declaration. If I just uncheck this, so by default this is always unchecked. Ideally it should always be checked. I don't know why Microsoft hasn't been able to work on this piece, but in my view it should always be on rather than off, right? But anyways, that's how the by default it is. So what happens if this is the scenario when you insert the module, you see that you don't get here the value, you don't get that option explicit, right? Why? Because you don't have that option available. So you have to make sure before you start writing the VBA, go here in this, you know, editor and make sure this should be check marked and click OK. Right now, going forward, whenever you insert any module, you will find that option explicit by default added. And about for this particular module, you can definitely go and write this manually also. Make sure you write the correct spellings. If you're not going to write the correct spellings, this will not allow, this will create the problem for you. So you must write the correct spellings, guys, right? So that's all. Now let me insert the module. You see that now I inserted the module 3 and this is there. So this is, first of all, we have learned how to get this inserted, because many times, you know what happens, if you keep this option on, it is always a good practice because you may forget it the next time. So I just go and remove this module 3. So I say that, do you want to export the module before removing it? Well, I don't want to export it, so I simply say no. And this is my module 2. So again, I right click and I just remove it. Do you want to export this module before removing it? No. Right? So once you have this option explicit activated over here, you don't have to add it again in any of the module, or even if you go and open any other workbook and you go in its background, you will always find that option. Okay, this is a one-time activity. Now let us see the use of it. First of all, I go here and I press F4. If you remember the shortcut key to rename the module, or you can use the property window also, or you can use the F4, provided you should be on the, you should have selected the right module. So I go here and write here that option underscore explicit, right? Option explicit is obviously a VBA reserved word, so you cannot use with the space, but I'm using the underscore, so this should allow me, right? So now let us see. I'll give you the example. Now guys, see this. So understand, or maybe the use of option explicit. This is a very important feature. Now sometimes, so right now I go and create a variable called dim, let's say I as integer, dim j as integer, dim k as integer, and then let's say dim var1 as integer, then I declare dim var2 as integer, and then I declare one more final as integer. Okay, now let's say I give them the values I equals to 10, j equals to 10. By the way, you can also declare all these values, you know, in one line. How? You just need to use the colon, right? Not the semicolon, but the colon, right? Right now I'm using the colon, so I can go and declare in this way as well. 90, then shift, and then use that semicolon key. So ij and then k equals to, let's say, 100, and then again colon. So this is sometimes people use it when they declare so many variables. You know, it's always good to save the lines which, you know, are going to make your program look little longer, right? So you can, it's easy for us to scroll up and scroll down if we can declare all these variables. It's in one line, right? I mean, it's just your matter of choice, but I'm just going to give you the option. So we can write here var2 equals to, let's say again 90, and that's it. And finally you say that final equals to, so here I'm gonna write final equals to I plus j plus, you know, the k plus the var1 plus var2, and that's it, right? So finally, now what do you think if I put the local window over here? You see what's gonna happen. The moment I run this code, there is a bug in this program. I'm not sure if you have noticed it or not. You see that? I'm gonna run it. Look at this, variable not defined. Now which variable I forgot to define? It's highlighting it, var1. There is a typo mistake, guys. It's actually not double R, it's single R, right? So it's very easy for me to trace this, right? And I can remove this, and now if I run the program, and you know, I will be having my all the values here, and you have your final output as 500, 300. Make sense, right? Now see this. I'm gonna remove this option explicit from here. Let's say you haven't activated this. You didn't go to the tool and the reference and you didn't activate this. And now again what you did, there is a typo error which you created, and it's very common thing, you know, when you make big codes, it happens. You can do a typo mistake, right? So when I run this, there is no error coming. There is no error coming, guys. There's no error coming, variable not defined. Why? Because if you do not use the option explicit, what will happen, VBA will create this var1 as a separate variable. Look at this, right? And now what will happen, finally, when this value go in the final, this var1, instead of using the var1 as 10, because that's what with this aim you created actually this variable, right? You wanted to use the 10 here, but due to the typo mistake you declared it as VARR, but VARR1 is empty, and that's why you don't see 300. You see the value as 290. The program ran and you didn't get the error. But this is wrong, right? So you need a mechanism which can always keep a check that what you are using, you should declare it. It's a must situation, right? This can be very dangerous, right? In fact, you know what guys, if I just go and just, you know, for the second, I just cut this from here, what do you think? Will this code run now? I haven't declared anything. Of course this will run. Look at this. Every variable is declared as variant, right? Because you deleted it. So what happened, VBA is now going to take the charge. Now you don't even have to write dim I as integer, dim I as variant, dim k as variant, because if you're not declaring anything, by default it is going to be declared as variant, like dim I, dim j, dim k. So dim I as variant, dim I, both means the same thing. Or even if you don't declare it, that also means the same thing if you're using somewhere, right? That's very funny. So it's a funny, but it can, I mean, lead to seriously, I mean, you know, the serious complications, because if you just go and use like this, nobody's going to call you the programmer, right? It can lead to I don't know, I mean, it can impact you definitely if you sort of make this kind of a code. So you have to declare the variables. That's very important, right? Because now here you will not be able to understand this. You will not be able to catch up this error, right? So if I just go and copy and paste the same thing here. Now if I just go and declare the option explicit, this is a great option. I always use it, and you must use it actually, you know, there's no other alternate. So when I run this, you see that it immediately captured. Okay, so I'm gonna just correct it. So I just go and correct it, right? Now for example, if you just write here I and I, you know, while writing it, you're just key, you know, you just pressed it, it remained there for a little longer time, and this I changed to II. You see that? Variable not defined. It's going to capture it for you. Isn't it beautiful? It's amazing feature, you know. Now once you have done all the things, so it's gonna run it like this, right? So this is going to work. So if they ask you what is the option explicit, what do you know? Tell us about the option explicit. Why it is important? Is it the by default option there, where it comes, where it appears, or they ask you that what are the uses, what are the drawbacks of the option explicit, from where you can get that? So we can say that option explicit is always available under the tools option. Go in the VBA editor, click on the tool option, and make sure you have their option called require variable declaration, which by default remains unchecked. We have to, you know, check mark that, right? So once we make that, once we select that, we don't have to check mark that again in future. It will remain there. When you do that, your option explicit comes on the top, though you can type in manually also, but that's not a good way, because if you don't activate this option, who knows, the next time when you insert any module, you may forget to write it here, right? So that's why, to make it by default option, to make it appear on every module, you know, whenever you insert any module, this is the best way. You go to the tools and the option and activate that require variable declaration, isn't it guys, right? So this is available under tools and reference. Very simple, right? So you have to tell the use of it. Obviously you can tell them that this especially take care of the variables when you make a big programs, and when you declare the variables, if any variable you are using, for example you are using I as 100, I equals to 100, and you just declare that as double I, or maybe vice versa, it will immediately capture that, because it will check that if you are using any variable as, let's say, I and it is declared as I, it will show as variable not declared, and it will highlight that portion. If you do not declare the option explicit, VBA will create two variables, separate variables. I is another one variable, I is the second variable, and that way the value which you are trying to use in the I, it's not going to be used because you are using I. So that can create a problem. You can exactly tell them this scenario which we have done here, guys. Okay, so this covers your option explicit. Right now, in my next video we are going to talk about how to call the macros and what are the different kinds of the variables, right? The scope of the variable, the life of a variable, so local variables, public variables, global variables, what are all these things. So in my next session we will be talking about that. Thank you so much.